Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar event. My name is Joshua, and I'm going to be your presenter today. Well, my computer shows about 1 minute till 1, but I believe it's actually closer to 1 p.m. We know how those CPU computers or time clocks are. They can sometimes be a little off. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to today's event. Our topic is Accounts Payable Reports. Before we get started on the topic at hand, folks are kind of still coming into the room. It's not a terribly detailed or difficult topic. We may not go the full 20 minutes, but we'll certainly get in as much information or time as we can. If you have questions, please type those into the questions portion of the webinar for me. We will work no later than 1:20 Eastern Time, and then I will be finished with what I'm going to discuss, if not before. I'll be happy to stick around and answer questions about the topic if you have questions about that. However, if you've ever, at a point seen what you came to see about the webinar event, you can just click the File menu on your webinar control panel and choose Leave Webinar. Thank you in advance for attending. Just before we get started on this, I just want to point out, again, if folks have not seen this before, I think we may even have this particular accounts payable reports already listed on our Church Windows YouTube page here. So here under accounting on our playlist page, you may be able to see something that already is detailing or is on the same topic that essentially we're doing today. If not, then this webinar event will be on our YouTube channel here between now and the close of business on Friday. Okay, so just an FYI, we will have all of our webinar events are being put on our YouTube channel within by the end of the same business week that they're being the events are occurring. So use that YouTube channel. It's very helpful and has lots of information available for you in addition to our Church Windows support blog, or our technicians, including myself, are simply a phone call away. All right, our current version of Church Windows is 18.15.4, right up here in the upper right corner. Hopefully everybody can see that right here. Okay. This is the current version of Church Windows. If you have something different and you have questions about it, please let us know. You can always download the patch from our website. So let's go ahead and log into accounting here and open accounting, and let's talk about accounts payable. So where we can find the accounts payable reports, of course, are in one of two places. We can either go to reports in the center here, the little printer icon, and then over here we've got the one called accounts payable that we can add to our multiple reports list, groupings if we wish, or we can go up to reports and export at the top, and here under worksheets in the upper left, we can choose the option called accounts payable to open up our basically four different accounts payable reports. Those are the only two places or ways that you can access these accounts payable reports, through the multiple reports printer at the middle of the screen, or of the portal, or from the reports worksheets list and choosing accounts payable. The other thing that's really important to understand about accounts payable is the accounts payable reports will only report on the accounts that are listed under the ledger on our chart of accounts called accounts payable right here. We see that any of these other liabilities that we have that start with the number 2, the accounts payable reports will not include information about those accounts. Only our ledger called accounts payable with the sub-accounts that reveals all of our vendors and payee accounts. I think it's, working with this system as long as I have and knowing as much as I do about it, it's important to understand that these vendors and payees are accounts just like any other account in the chart of accounts, including other liabilities. The difference is they simply don't have an account number assigned to them, but they are still an account. We debit and credit them just like we do any other account in our chart of accounts. Okay, so if you're, not seeing a particular vendor or payee on your accounts payable reports, you need to come into the chart of accounts here and make sure that when you click the plus sign next to your accounts payable liability that that vendor name is appearing in this subledger, okay? So that's just a really important distinction, and we're going to see that on our reports here when we look at these here soon. So let's go back up to our reports and export worksheets and go to accounts payable. The four reports that are here, we're going to kind of go through them each, spending just a couple or a few minutes on each of them. So the first one that comes in here, well, first of all, our accounting year is whatever, accounting year we're working in. But one of the things I like to point out about, and is a really great feature and benefit of accounting, is that we don't need to physically change our accounting year here, right here, at the opening screen in order to be able to run a report for a different accounting year. Okay, I can still stay in 2016, go up to worksheets, accounts payable, and if I want to run a report of my accounts payable vendors or balance sheet or treasurer's report, I can just go to this accounting year menu in the top left and just choose the year and then run my report there. Really nice feature. Certainly saves time and mouse clicks and what have you. So we're going to run this for these reports for 2016. That's the year that we're working in. Okay. So the first report that we're looking at here is the one called Accounts Payable List. As the name implies, Accounts Payable List is literally just a list of all of our accounts payable vendor accounts, either with a balance or without a balance, depending on what you ask for. Okay, so if you want to include just all of your accounts payable vendors, just check the one labeled Include Vendors with a Zero Balance. And then simply once we click Print, it reveals a list of every vendor account that we have in the ledger called Accounts Payable, regardless of balance or activity. Okay, but it makes for a lengthy report. If you've got 50 or 100 vendors, this could be 5 or 10 page report. Okay. So many times I will use this report and not include vendors with a zero balance, just to make it quick and simple and reveal it. There's generally a reason why we want to, why we're coming in here to run this report. So the other one is to simply show the unpaid invoices. So if I uncheck Include Vendors with a Zero Balance and Show Unpaid Invoices and simply click Print, it's going to reveal any account that has an invoice that is not yet marked as paid. Okay, whether it's actually validly outstanding or not, it's simply going to show any vendor that has a bill entered that isn't marked as paid. So we notice here, like on the first one, on here, if we zoom in on our AEP one right here at the very top, we see that we've got American Electric Power unpaid invoice. It has no invoice number, no due date entered. The amount of it was $80. And so that's a bill that's outstanding and not paid, as are all the rest of these. Okay. There are times when, I was dealing with these types of issues on support calls a lot. A user will call me and say, "Hey Josh, I see a balance under accounts payable, when I go to my balance sheet." So if I go to balance sheet here, and we'll run it as of July, that's fine. And we click Print. Down here under our accounts payable liability, notice down here it's italicized. Let me get my highlighter out and draw some focus here. Accounts payable, here's the liability ledger, and it shows a July balance of $7,269.25. Okay, and folks will call me and say, "Hey, why am I seeing this balance in accounts payable vendor?" Well, this is not the account that's containing the balance. It's one of or several of those subledger vendors that have that balance. And so the balance sheet won't ever show the separate vendors that have the balance. So what I'll frequently do is come into my accounts payable report options, choose the accounts payable list, unchecking Include Vendors with a Zero Balance, many times even unchecking Show Unpaid Invoices, because all we're interested in is determining which vendors have a balance or making up that balance. And then simply once we uncheck both boxes and click Print, it reveals a name of the vendor account and what their actual account balance is. It would be here whether it was positive or negative. Okay? So I'll print this report and have them use this to help research each one of these accounts to determine why the vendor has a balance. Or we can, of course, show unpaid invoices as well. And again, simply click print. It does add on some length to the report. So this now makes it a 2-page report instead of a 1-page report. But I do want to see the due dates and invoice numbers if applicable. Okay, if not, I'd have to go in and research each of these. Well, I'm going to have to research them anyway. Maybe I'm dealing with a duplicate bill situation or a missing payment, but until I look into each of them, I don't know. Okay? Another effective use of this report is if I'm not interested in there and I'm wanting to include all accounts with zero balances, right here, notice under our fields or columns, basically, I've got account name and current balance. What this report is also useful for is allowing me to double check and verify my vendor information. So if I go ahead, I can add my vendor balance and city, state, and zip code just to verify that I've got all of the current information correct for each one of those vendors. And so then once I click print, it will reveal all of the vendor information that I choose to add to the report that I can then simply go through and double check or cross-reference with current bills or what have you, or whatever I have, just to make sure it's correct. Okay? This accounts payable list is a very simple but very important and helpful report. So again, if you've got a balance under accounts payable that you're unsure about and you're not seeing the actual vendors that make up the balance, use this accounts payable list report to help you with that. Okay? The second report here is our aging report. Traditionally, an aging report basically shows us invoices and how old they are. Okay? This we don't have any date control on. It just basically shows us any outstanding invoices and whether they're 30, 60, 90 days old or more than 30, 60, or 90 days old. Again, we do have the ability to be able to choose certain information about the vendors if we wish. I'm not sure in this case we need all this, so we're going to take that off, take off current balance, and we're going to leave the aging report and click print. So here, it takes that same accounts payable list report we had, but it shows us the same information, invoice information if applicable, but it shows us clearly, are the invoices 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or more than 90 days. So we notice here there is actually a fair amount of detail, especially if we don't see a due date. So right here it says, like under our AEP, the $80 initially, it says more than 90 days. So the $80 invoice that we're looking at here is more than 90 days prior to, in this case, July 26th, 2016. Okay? Or down here, notice for our city florist, we've got 3 invoices that are outstanding. More than 90 days, less than 30 days, and between 60 and 90 days. All right? And again, it doesn't matter whether there's an invoice number or a due date entered or not. It will simply show that there's an invoice outstanding, and based on the date occurred of that bill that was entered, it still considers the item, it calculates, how long it's been outstanding, or if it's more than 90 days or more than 60 or more than 30, what have you. Okay? I don't use this report a terribly, a lot of times on support calls, but if you've got a lot of invoices and you want to see which ones are outstanding and want to see how old they are, this is the report for you. Okay? So let's maybe scroll down and see what else we've got here. If we want to see, I guess this kind of goes back to our accounts payable list report too. If you want to show something in the invoice number column or the due date, you have to have that information entered when you're entering your bill. And so this kind of is an important detail when we're now moving down to the report called Show Payments Due By. Okay? You don't have to have an invoice number entered, but in order to use the Show Payments Due By, you've got to at least have a due date entered when you're at Enter Bills. So if we go to Enter Bills, we're not talking about the date occurred here. We're talking about the right here to the right of the invoice, the one called Due Date. If that's not entered, this, show payments due by report isn't going to be of any use for us. Okay? Now again, due date and invoice number are optional in church windows. They're not required. But we would certainly recommend that if you have them, enter them. Okay? So let's say we want to show, okay, what bills do we still have outstanding from the end of June that are due? Once I change my show dates, payments due by June 30th and click print, there they are. There's the 2 bills that I have that are unpaid there. But again, unlike those other ones where I know we had those invoices that were more than 90 days old, the only reason why this report shows these 2 bills only is because I have a due date entered. Without a due date, the system doesn't know how to calculate or can't use this and enter that on this report. Okay? Again, the fields are virtually all available for any of these reports. Finally, our accounts payable journal. To be honest, this is one of my favorite reports in accounting because it can be run for all of my vendors or it can be run for just a single vendor. So if I come in here and I choose, say, American Electric Power, our power company, and I simply click print, it reveals every transaction, debit and credit, bill and payment that I've posted for my electric company. So right here we see, let me zoom in on a little bit here. So here we see the total accounts payable vendor beginning balance. There isn't one there. So then it shows all of our, vendor name, if there was a beginning balance, transaction number, account name, date occurred, type, checker, invoice number, amount, and running balance. With each one of those will be populated. And then finally it will also show, and the account number is really critical too. It shows right here the beginning balance, the total charges, total payments, and my current balance of that vendor account. So pretty much this report does help me also find out where my $80 comes from. So in this case, it's a result of these February 15th bills for $50 and $30 respectively. Okay? Well, it's the same transaction number, just charging to 2 different expense accounts. And it still does show my total accounts payable ending balance, which is the main ledger, not the actual vendor I'm looking at. But you can run it for a single vendor or for all of them if you wish. But rather than going into something like your transaction journal, if you go, okay, I want to see, my vendor, what expense account has been charged for a particular bill, you can come right in here and run the report for the vendor, and it'll show right here under the bill, right here on the left-hand side, which expense account was debited, right here. These 5 accounts. Okay? So another way of looking at your accounts payable vendor account's particular detail. Okay? So again, this really does encompass everything all in one place. Puts my bills and my payments together because the common denominator for them is the vendor account. My bill is entered to credit the vendor, my payment debits the vendor. So ultimately, we're trying to get to a 0 current balance for a vendor to show that we've paid them, entered the bills, and paid them properly. Okay? If we've got a balance still outstanding under my accounts payable vendor, then we've not done something correctly. Okay? Then we might have to go in and run something like our accounts payable journal or our transaction journal to try and figure out what's going on with regards to that. The final tag I want to put on this here with about a minute left here is if I go to accounts payable and I print my accounts payable list, maybe unchecking, including everything, I just want to see the balance of the vendor. Once you print this report, this doesn't provide me any information as to when these balances or where they came from. So if I go to AEP and then I go back to my chart of accounts here in the center and I find my vendor account called Accounts or American Electric Power and I click the balance tab, it clearly shows me that my month where this began was in the month of February. So all of my other bills and payments that I've entered after that have gotten this back to what was the balance that was not dealt with back starting in February. So use those balances, the balance tab on the chart of accounts, to help you find out if you can narrow down where the month or the problem where it began. All right, folks, that's it. It's 20 minutes after. I'm done with what I'm talking about here. I hope this was proved helpful for you or proven helpful. I'll see if folks have questions there. Let's see if we can, if folks are maybe going to type something in there for me. Again, if you have to go, we understand. Choose the file, leave webinar event. We hope it's been helpful. Again, and you will use the YouTube channel on our blog page. All right, it looks like folks are kind of diving out fairly quickly here. Um, oh well, thank you, Diane. I like to think that the information we offer is helpful for folks, but it's nice to hear it. Thank you. All right, well, I'm not seeing anything coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar for everybody. And again, we're going to be getting our August and September webinar events up on the website here soon if they're not already there. And we certainly hope to see you at one of those other future events. All right, folks, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.